The key slid into the lock, silent as oil. David, 35, held his breath, a small smile on his face. 2 months in Austin developing the new platform had felt like 2 years. He was finally home to his house in Miami, 2 full days early, and he couldn't wait to see Sophia's face. He eased the door open. The house was quiet. He set his carry-on bag down gently on the tile floor. "Sophia," he called softly. No answer. He moved down the hall, his smile fading slightly. Maybe she was out. Then he saw it. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. He heard a sound. A laugh. It was Sophia's, but it wasn't the laugh she used with him. This one was light, unrestrained, and carefree. He froze, his hand still on his briefcase handle. Then, a man's voice, low and confident, murmured something David couldn't catch. David's blood ran cold. He hadn't even taken his jacket off. He didn't hesitate. He didn't wait. He pushed the door open. It didn't slam. It opened with a slow, heavy swing. And there they were. The scene froze. Sophia, 33, scrambled for the sheets, her eyes wide with a shock so profound it was almost comical. The man, whom David vaguely recognized as Mateo, her charismatic 38-year-old boss, looked up. For a long second, nobody moved. The only sound in the room was the low hum of the air conditioner, oblivious to the world that had just shattered. David felt nothing. Not the hot rush of rage he would have expected. Not the crushing weight of pain. Just a sudden, sharp, icy clarity. He looked past his wife, his gaze landing squarely on Mateo. He didn't raise his voice. The absolute calm in his tone was more terrifying than any shout. "You have 30 seconds to get your clothes and get out of my house." David pulled back his sleeve and looked at his watch. His hand was perfectly steady. "If you are still here when I count to 31, David continued, his voice flat, "I am calling the police and reporting a break-in." Mateo, charismatic no more, looked like a cornered animal. He didn't look at Sophia. He grabbed his trousers from the floor and stumbled towards the bathroom, avoiding David's eyes. Sophia just sat there, clutching the sheet to her chest, her mouth open. David didn't look at her. He just watched Mateo, counting down silently in his head. 20. Mateo fumbled with his shirt buttons, hopping on one foot to pull on a shoe. 10. He snatched his jacket and wallet from the dresser. 5. Mateo bolted past David, a cloud of expensive cologne and fear trailing behind him. He didn't say a word. A moment later, the front door slammed shut. The silence in the bedroom was absolute. David finally turned his gaze to his wife. He was ready for the tears. He was ready for the apologies, the excuses, that it just happened, that it meant nothing. He was not ready for the look on her face. The shock had faded, replaced by a dark, simmering rage. "You," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "You ruined everything." David blinked. The words didn't compute. "What did you just say?" "You were supposed to be back on Sunday," she shouted, finally standing up, wrapping the sheet around her like armor. "I had a plan. We had a plan. How could you come back early? How could you do this to me?" It hit David like a physical blow, sharper and colder than the infidelity itself. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was a calculation. He hadn't just interrupted an affair, he had interrupted a strategy. The last 2 months of lonely nights, the brief, distracted phone calls, the feeling that she was pulling away, it all snapped into focus. Sophia was still talking, pacing the room, words tumbling out about how he was never home, how Mateo understood her, how this was his fault. David tuned her out. He felt his pulse, slow and steady. The ice in his veins was now steel. He said nothing. He simply reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out his smartphone, and unlocked it. Sophia stopped pacing. "What are you doing? Are you calling him back, David?" He didn't answer. He opened the camera app. Click. He photographed the disheveled bed. Click. He photographed the 2 champagne glasses on the nightstand, the glasses they had used for their last anniversary. Click. He walked into the attached bathroom and photographed the watch Mateo had left behind on the counter in his haste. "David, stop it," she shrieked, finally realizing what he was doing. "What are you doing? Stop it." She lunged for the phone. David simply held up his free hand, palm out. The simple gesture stopped her cold. His expression was unreadable, but his authority in that moment was total. He wasn't her husband anymore. He was an observer, a collector of facts. He finished and put the phone back in his pocket. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the woman he loved, but the woman who had just called his return an inconvenience. "This conversation is over," he said. His voice was flat, devoid of all emotion. "Get your things." Her anger instantly vanished, replaced by the first, sharp flicker of panic. She finally understood. What? David? No, wait. We can talk about this. Don't be like this. You can stay here tonight, he interrupted, walking to the bedroom door. In the guest room, he stopped in the doorway and looked back at her. But I want you gone by morning. My lawyer will be in touch. David didn't slam the door. He closed it behind him with a quiet, definitive click. He heard Sophia yell his name from the bedroom, a sound of frustrated rage, not regret. He didn't turn back. He walked past the pictures of their wedding in the hall without a glance. He picked up his carry-on bag, opened the front door, and stepped out into the humid Miami night. The slam of the front door was the only sound he allowed himself. He drove for 10 minutes, his hands steady on the wheel, before pulling into the first decent hotel he saw. He checked in using his credit card, took the key, and went to the room. It was anonymous. Standard. Perfect. He sat on the edge of the bed, his jacket still on. He didn't replay the image of Sophia and Mateo. That was simple, primal, and understandable. Betrayal. It hurt, but it made sense. What he replayed, over and over, was her voice. You ruined everything. I had a plan. It wasn't the panic of being caught. It was the fury of having an operation disrupted. He had been gone for 2 months. 2 months of her being distant, blaming his work, ending calls quickly. He had thought it was just the stress of his absence. Now, he saw it as something else. She was busy. This wasn't just an affair. An affair doesn't need a plan that his arrival could ruin. An affair is the plan. This was something different. This was logistical. His mind flashed back to the week before he left for Austin. Sophia, uncharacteristically organized, had spread a stack of papers on the kitchen counter. It's just the pension fund, David, she had said, tapping a page. We need to move these assets to be more aggressive. My analyst says it's a smart move. He had been late for a flight, packing his briefcase. Can it wait? It has to be done before the end of the quarter, she'd insisted. Just sign here. It's a power of attorney for this specific account. It just lets me manage it while you're in that Austin dead zone. He trusted her. He signed. David stood up from the hotel bed. He pulled out his phone. His thumb hovered over his lawyer's name, but he paused. He needed facts, not just suspicion. He scrolled further down his contacts and pressed the name. Isabella. Sophia's younger sister. The smart one. The one who had bypassed the family's expectations, gotten a finance degree, and now worked as a forensic analyst for a major firm. They had always shared a quiet, mutual respect. She answered on the third ring, her voice groggy. David? It's almost 1 a.m. Is Sophia okay? Is everything okay? No, David said, his voice flat. I'm at a hotel. I came home early, Izzy. A sharp, painful silence on the other end. I caught her, David said. He heard her exhale, a long, slow breath. Oh, David. I'm so sorry. Was it with him? Mateo? The question hit David like a second shock. You knew? I didn't know, Isabella said quickly, her voice now wide awake and tense. I just suspected. The way she talked about him. The late nights at the office. I told her to be careful. I told her he was bad news. David, It's worse than that, Izzy. David cut in, pacing the small room. That's why I'm calling you. When I found them, she wasn't sorry. She was furious. She yelled at me for coming home early. She said I ruined her plan. Isabella said nothing, but David could hear the click of a keyboard in the background. She was already at her computer. What plan, David? Before I left, I signed some documents. She said it was for our pension fund. She said it was a limited power of attorney to manage the account while I was gone. The keyboard clicking stopped. David, Isabella said, her voice now sharp and professional. Which account? Exactly. My inheritance portfolio. The one at Fidelity. Another silence, heavier this time. Give me your logins, Isabella said. All of them. And the account number if you have it. I'll call you back. He gave her everything. Then he waited. He didn't sleep. He didn't turn on the TV. He just sat in the chair, watching his phone on the nightstand. The hours ticked by. 2 a.m. 3 a.m. At 3:17 a.m., the phone lit up. He snatched it before the first ring finished. Izzy. David. Her voice was hollow. She sounded shaken. You were right to call. This isn't an affair. It's a heist. David stood up, his knuckles white as he gripped the phone. Tell me. The power of attorney wasn't limited, Isabella said, her voice trembling with a cold rage he recognized. It was a full, general power of attorney over that entire portfolio. She had complete control. What did she do? She's been liquidating it, David. piece by piece for the last 8 weeks. Small transfers at first, to avoid detection. Then, 3 days ago, the last one. A massive withdrawal. How much? David's voice was a whisper. $150,000, David. It's all gone. David leaned his head against the wall. The infidelity was a betrayal of their past. This was a betrayal of their future. Gone where, Izzy? The joint account? No, she said. If it were, you'd have a chance. She was smarter than that. She transferred every cent to an offshore account. Cayman Islands. So it's gone. It gets worse, Isabella said, the sounds of typing now furious. It's a shell corporation, set up specifically for these funds. I've been pulling registration documents for the last hour. Can you find out who owns it? I already did, Isabella replied. The corporation was registered 9 weeks ago, just 1 week before you left for Austin. The sole director and beneficiary? Mateo Ruiz. David hung up. He stood in the sterile silence of the hotel room. The air conditioner hummed. $150,000. The plan she had screamed about was now crystal clear. It was brilliant, in its own cold-blooded way. The affair wasn't the goal, it was the distraction. She wanted him to find out about Mateo. She wanted him to be blinded by the simple, primitive rage of infidelity. He was supposed to file for divorce, fight over the house, feel morally superior, all while she and Mateo drained his inheritance and vanished. His early return hadn't just interrupted an affair, it had disrupted a multi-million-dollar exit strategy. He thought about calling the police, but he stopped. Isabella was a financial analyst, but he was an engineer. He understood systems. A Cayman Islands account registered to a shell corporation was a fortress. The money was already gone. Proving who took it was hard. Proving Sophia was a willing co-conspirator and not just a foolish woman manipulated by her lover was even harder. They would claim Mateo did it all, that Sophia was just a pawn. David needed proof. He needed her, in her own words, admitting to the theft. He didn't have to wait. He knew Sophia. She was arrogant. She and Mateo would be celebrating right now. They would be toasting their new life, believing David was at home, shattered and broken, consumed by the simple fact of the affair. They thought he was a fool. He opened the Find My app on his phone, a stupid, sentimental thing they'd set up in case of emergencies. He watched the blue dot. That was Sophia. It wasn't at the house. It wasn't at her office. It was moving. It stopped at a condo building in Brickell, Mateo's building. He watched for an hour. Just after 4 a.m., the dot moved again. Both of them, he assumed. They were heading to Miami Beach. The dot settled on the location of Sea Spice, one of the most expensive and visible restaurants on the river. Celebrating. They were actually out celebrating their victory. David picked up his car keys. His rage was no longer ice. It was fuel. Cold, clean, and efficient. He didn't go to the restaurant. Not at first. He went home. The house was empty. Sophia was gone, just as he'd told her to be. But she had been in a hurry. She'd left things behind. He went straight to her desk in the study. He found it in the back of a drawer, taped beneath a stack of old stationery. A small, silver thumb drive. The one she always used for private files. He slipped it into his pocket. He didn't have time to check it now. He drove to Miami Beach. The valet at Sea Spice looked surprised to see someone arriving alone at that hour, but David just handed him a $50 bill. He walked into the open-air restaurant. The late-night crowd was thin but wealthy. And there they were, at the best table by the water, the one closest to the docking yachts. Sophia and Mateo. They were laughing. A bottle of expensive wine was half empty between them. Mateo leaned in, his hand on her back, his voice low. Sophia looked radiant, energized, and alive. She raised her glass. They were toasting. David didn't approach. He turned and walked to the maitre d's stand. The man looked up, annoyed. "I need your help," David said, his voice quiet but commanding. He placed 2 $100 bills on the stand. "That couple by the water. The woman is my associate. I want to pay their bill." The maitre d' looked at the money and his expression softened. "Of course, sir." "And," David said, "I want you to send them your most expensive bottle of champagne. A 1996 Dom Perignon P2, if you have it." "That is an $1,100 bottle, sir." David placed his credit card on the stand. "I know. I want it sent over right now, and I need you to have the waiter say something to them. Verbatim." "What would you like him to say?" David leaned in. "I want him to say, 'A gift to celebrate your new venture.' From David." The maitre d' paused, finally understanding this was not a simple gesture. He nodded slowly. "As you wish, sir." David retreated to a dark alcove near the entrance, hidden by a large plant. but with a perfect view of their table. He took out his phone and started the audio recorder. He watched the waiter present the champagne. He saw the confusion on Sophia's face. He saw Matteo wave it away, saying they didn't order it. Then he saw the waiter lean in and deliver the message. The reaction was instantaneous. Sophia's glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the stone floor. Matteo's face went white. He didn't look confused. He looked caught. Sophia stood up, knocking her chair over. She was scanning the restaurant, her eyes wide with pure, animal panic. Matteo grabbed her arm, threw cash on the table, and pulled her toward the exit. They weren't walking. They were fleeing. David was already moving, walking briskly ahead of them, out into the humid air of the parking garage. He stepped behind a large concrete pillar, his phone held loosely at his side, the microphone aimed out. He heard them run up, their footsteps echoing. How could he know? Sophia was hyperventilating, her voice a strained whisper. How could he know? He was supposed to be in Austin until Sunday. He said, "New venture." Matteo hissed, his voice no longer smooth or confident, but sharp with panic. "That's not about us. That's about the money. You said he was stupid. You said he'd just think you were cheating." "I thought he would," she cried. "He was supposed to be the broken-hearted husband. He wasn't supposed to be smart." "This ruins everything," Matteo snarled, grabbing her arms. "If he knows about the account, he'll freeze it." "My God, Sophia, you've ruined us." "I ruined us. You were the one who—" "It was a good plan," David said. He stepped out from behind the pillar. They both froze, turning toward his voice. Sophia let out a small, strangled scream. Matteo took an involuntary step back, pulling Sophia in front of him like a shield. David stood 10 feet away, his phone in his hand, his expression calm. "You almost had it," David continued, his voice echoing slightly in the concrete garage. "The affair was a nice touch. Very distracting." "David," Sophia whispered, her hand outstretched. "Please, it's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think," David said. He took a step closer. "I just had one question for Matteo. The wire transfers. Was it exactly 150,000, or did you manage to get more before I got home?" Matteo's face contorted with rage. He knew what David was doing. Sophia's face simply crumpled. The terror was gone, replaced by the hollow, empty expression of total defeat. She knew, in that instant, that she had lost everything. "Thank you," David said, looking directly at Sophia. "That's all the confirmation I needed." He pressed the stop button on his recorder, the click loud in the silence. "You can't use that," Matteo yelled, finally finding his voice. "That's illegal." "You're right," David said, slipping the phone into his pocket. "It's not for the police. It's for the board of directors at your company. I'm sure they'd love to hear how their top executive spends his time." He turned and walked toward his car. "David, wait," Sophia screamed, running after him. "Don't do this. Please. I'll give it back. We can fix this." David didn't stop. He got in his car, started the engine, and pulled out of the parking space. He left them there, bathed in the sickly yellow light of the garage, screaming at each other. The heist was over. David didn't return to the hotel. The sun was rising, casting a sickly gray light over the city. He drove to his office. The building was empty, the air still. He sat at his desk, plugged in his laptop, and inserted the thumb drive he'd taken from Sophia's desk. He wasn't surprised to find it unencrypted. Arrogance. The drive contained a single folder, Project V. He opened it. It wasn't love letters or photos. It was spreadsheets. It was a business plan. His blood, which had been simmering with cold rage, turned to ice. They had itemized him. One file was a timeline. Phase 1, secure POA. Check. Phase 2, asset liquidation. Check. A list of his accounts, with the Fidelity one marked in green. Phase 3, induce separation. This was the next step. A bulleted list of tactics, emotional withdrawal, false accusations, gaslighting, to make him the one to file for divorce. Phase 4, relocate. A budget for flights to Lisbon, 6-month apartment rentals, and applications for Portuguese residency. They weren't just running. They were emigrating. The affair was a tool, a calculated emotional explosive designed to make him initiate the legal separation, to make him look like the angry, irrational one, while they quietly moved the assets and fled. His early return had set their entire plan on fire. He saved the files to his secure server and then called Isabella. It was 6 a.m. "I'm awake," she said, her voice already sharp with caffeine. "I have more," David said. "I have their entire plan. On a spreadsheet. I'm sending it to you now." He emailed the encrypted file. He heard her open it. My God, she whispered. They have your 401k listed as Phase 5. They were going to try to get everything. I need you to package this, David said, his voice hard. The wire transfer analysis, the audio file, and this spreadsheet. I need 3 separate packages. Make them clean. Make them simple. Make them undeniable. When do you need them? In 2 hours, David said. We go live at 9 a.m. He hung up and made 2 more calls. The first was to the top divorce attorney in Miami, a shark his own company kept on retainer. The second was to the lead partner at his firm, explaining he was activating his emergency legal counsel benefit. At 8:50 a.m., David sat in a high-rise conference room, a cup of coffee in his hand. His attorney sat opposite him. Isabella was on a video call on the screen. The packages are ready, Isabella said. Uploaded to the secure drop. Ready for deployment on your command. David looked at his watch. 8:59 a.m. He nodded to his attorney. File it. At 9 a.m., the lawyer hit send on an emergency petition for divorce. It wasn't for infidelity. It was for extraordinary circumstances of criminal fraud and intentional dissipation of marital assets. Simultaneously, he filed an ex parte injunction to freeze every known joint account and to place a temporary lien on the house. Front 1 was active. At 9:01 a.m., David opened a new email. He addressed it to the entire board of directors, the chief compliance officer, and the head of human resources at Mateo's Corporation. The subject line was clinical, urgent, documentation of criminal conspiracy and breach of fiduciary duty by Executive VP Mateo Ruiz. The body was short. To the board, please find attached a comprehensive dossier detailing a premeditated criminal enterprise operated by your executive, Mateo Ruiz, in conspiracy with his subordinate, Sofia Rivas. This dossier includes a forensic accounting trace of $150,000 wired from my accounts to an offshore shell corporation owned by Mr. Ruiz. A 4-minute audio file in which Mr. Ruiz and Ms. Rivas confess to the wire fraud and conspiracy. Their own internal spreadsheet, detailing the plan to steal further assets and flee the country. I have already filed this evidence with the Miami-Dade Police Economic Crimes Bureau. I trust you will act on this information with the speed it warrants. He attached the first package from Isabella. He hit send. Front 2 was active. At 9:03 a.m., David opened a new browser tab. He navigated to the secure online portal for the Miami-Dade Police Department's Economic Crimes Unit. He uploaded the entire, unedited package from Isabella, along with a sworn affidavit he had prepared through the night. He listed every fact. He provided the case number from his lawyer. He hit submit. Front 3 was active. He closed the laptop. He looked at his lawyer. Now we wait. It took 41 minutes. At 9:44 a.m., David's phone lit up. An email from the general counsel of Mateo's firm. Mr. Cortez, we are in receipt of your staggering documentation. We are treating this with the utmost gravity. Mr. Ruiz has been suspended, effective immediately. We have locked him out of the company's systems and security is escorting him from the building as we speak. We will be conducting a full internal audit. Please make yourself available for our investigators. At 9:51 a.m., his phone buzzed again. A text from Sofia. David, what did you do? Another. They're here. The police are at Mateo's condo. What did you do? Another. David, please. They're talking about fraud. Call me. You can stop this. At 10:15 a.m., Isabella sent him a link. It was an internal alert from the Financial Crimes Network. The target Cayman Islands account has been flagged by U.S. authorities. It is now frozen, pending a criminal investigation. The money was locked down. David's phone began to ring. It was Sofia. He watched it ring, then declined the call. He looked at his lawyer, who was already on the phone with the district attorney's office. David stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the city. He felt no pleasure. He felt no victory. He felt only the quiet, cold satisfaction of a problem being solved. The first dominoes had fallen. Now, he would simply wait for the rest. 6 months later, David stood in the echoing emptiness of the Miami house. It was no longer his. The sale had closed that morning. The furniture was gone, the walls were bare, and the only thing left was a single moving box on the kitchen counter. The legal storm had been swift and brutal. Faced with his own meticulous spreadsheets and the audio recording, Mateo's defense had evaporated. The corporation's internal audit had found further evidence of embezzlement, using David's $150,000 as a down payment for a larger scheme. He pled guilty to wire fraud and conspiracy. He was now in a federal prison, his career and finances obliterated, with a restitution order that would follow him for life. Sophia's fall was quieter, but just as complete. She had tried to paint herself as a victim, a woman blinded by love and manipulated by a powerful man. But the Phase 3, induced separation, file proved her full complicity. The audio of her voice, "He wasn't supposed to be smart," was the final nail. She, too, took a plea deal, 5 years of probation, 2,000 hours of community service, and a co-signature on the restitution. The divorce was a simple formality. The judge, having reviewed the criminal case, signed the decree in under 10 minutes. The house was sold, and the government, having successfully seized the frozen Cayman account, returned the full $150,000 to David. He was made whole. He taped the final box shut. It contained nothing personal, just old tax documents. He picked it up and turned to leave, just as the doorbell rang. It was Isabella. She stood in the doorway, offering a small, sad smile. "It's empty," she said, stating the obvious. "It is," David agreed. "It's just a box. It's amazing how much you can throw away when you're motivated. So you're really going?" "The truck's loaded," he said, walking past her onto the porch. He set the box down and turned to face her. "Plane to Austin leaves at 7. I'm starting the new project on Monday." They stood in the humid air, the silence comfortable between them. I brought you something," she said, pulling a small, simple envelope from her bag. He opened it. It was a check. "What's this?" "It's my share," she said, not looking at him. "From the family trust. I had my lawyer calculate what Sophia's restitution payments to you would be. That's the first 10 years of it. I'm paying her share." David stared at the check, then slowly folded it and tried to hand it back. "Izzy, no. I can't take this. This isn't your debt." "It's my family's," she said, her voice firm, finally meeting his gaze. "She'll never pay you back, David." "Not really. She's working at a coffee shop, living in her old room at my parents' house. This is justice. As close as I can get to it. Please, let me do this. So the books are balanced." He looked at her, seeing the hard-won peace in her eyes. He nodded slowly and slipped the check into his pocket. "Thank you. You didn't have to get involved in any of this." "Yes, I did," she said. "She's my sister, but you're my friend. And you deserve the truth." She stepped forward and gave him a hug, brief and strong. It wasn't romantic. It was the embrace of two soldiers who had survived a battle. "Be safe in Austin, David," she said, stepping back. "I will be," he said. "It's a new start. No baggage." "You're not angry anymore?" David thought for a moment. He looked back at the empty house, a place that held no memories for him now, only data. "No," he said, and he was surprised to find it was true. "Anger is for people who've lost something. I didn't lose anything. I just removed a problem." Isabella smiled, a real smile this time. "That's the engineer I know. Always solving the system. Always." She turned and walked to her car. He watched her go, a wave of profound gratitude washing over him, not for the money, but for her integrity. David picked up the last box, walked to his truck, and placed it in the passenger seat. He didn't look back at the house. He got in, started the engine, and pulled away from the curb. As he merged onto the highway, he turned on the radio, letting the music fill the cab. He was not a man running from a disaster. He was a man driving, calmly and deliberately, toward whatever came next. The case was closed.